Hi, dear friends. Noor Janjhi here with a book review, and today I would like to review the book of William Chittick, Me and Rumi, the autobiography of Shams Tabrizi. As you know, that Shams Tabrizi's name is very much famous because of the fame of Rumi's poetry, Diwan Shams and Masnavi Maulana Rumi. So it has been very much a mystical figure in Tasawwuf's history. However, William Chittick has tried uh, to portray him as a human being through that book, and that book is Me and Rumi. It is based on Makalat, discourses of Shams. It is translated and edited by William Chittick, and William Chittick is great name and very renowned figure of Sufism and Middle Eastern literature. Before this work, Shams Tabrizi, the enigmatic wandering mystic who famously transformed Jalaluddin Rumi from a scholar, traditional jurist, Islamic scholar, into a history's great poet of divine love, was largely a mythical figure. He existed primarily through the lens of Rumi's ecstatic poetry are the hagiographers written by later disciples. Chittick's book shatters the myth and brings the historical Shams into brilliant, raw, and something startling focus. This text is not an autobiography in the modern chronological sense. Instead, it is curated translation of the Maqalat-e Shams Tabrizi, the discourses of Shams Tabrizi. When Shams and Rumi sat together in Konya between 1244 and 1247, Rumi's disciples took private, unorganized notes of their conversations and Shams' spontaneous lectures. For centuries, these notes existed as a chaotic, fragmented manuscript. Chittick took the definitive Persian critical edition of these notes, compiled by Muhammad Ali Mubahid, translated roughly two-thirds of it, and meticulously organized into a thematic, readable format in shape of this book. And Chittick has divided this book into three phases, and those phases of Shams's life. First phase is my years without Maulana, Shams's early life and wanderings before meeting Maulana Rumi. And the second phase, my path to God, his spiritual philosophy and theology. And third one is my time with Maulana, his intimate, intense relationship with Rumi. So these three phases offer key themes on the life of Shams Tabrizi, and key themes and characteristic insights are firstly the humanization of a legend. Here we face one thing throughout the literature of world, that the great figures take a shape of mythological figures. They are not felt or posed as humanized figures. Chittak has tried to reflect on it that Shams Tabriz was a human being, and he has produced a humanized figure of legend. In Rumi's poetry, Shams is portrayed almost as a divine manifestation of light. In Me and Rumi, we meet the actual man, actual Shams Tabriz. Shams is revealed to be brilliantly learned, highly critical, sharp tongued, deeply pious, and fiercely independent. He is not a hippie, mystic operating outside the Islamic tradition. He is deeply rooted in the Quran and prophetic tradition, though he despises hypocritical killerics and superficial scholars. And the second theme is the dynamic of Rumi Shams dynamics of Rumi Shams relationships. Many people explain it or narrate it in just again a mystical tone and tenor, but he has focused uh, on a way that people may extract or may regard it as the discourse or interaction between the two persons, two people. So, popular culture often views Shams strictly as Rumi's teacher, but the Makalat reveals a far more complex mutual synergy. Shams notes that he was searching for someone who could bear his spiritual intensity. That is a new point in this discourse because people always explain that it was the Rumi who needed a mentor. However, the mentor or Shams himself needed a person who can bear the spiritual intensity, appear not just a student. He writes of Rumi with immense reverence, acknowledging Rumi's vast intellect while pushing him to break past book learning to experience direct divine testing or Zohar. Here again, the second important point is that Shams focused on Zohar from rather than the only bookish knowledge. He was focusing on that divine testing which he felt are found into Rumi. And the third theme is the necessity of separation. One of the most profound revelation of the book in Shams's awareness of his own role in Rumi's destiny. Shams explicitly implies that his sudden agonizing departures from Konya were deliberate. Deliberately, he left the Konya to leave their Rumi as Rumi may come up with his own thought, and that was act of spiritual pedagogy. That was spiritual learning in self. He knew that as long as he was physically present, Rumi would lean on him as a crutch and Shams tried to make independent to the Rumi, and the pain of separation was required to force Rumi to find the Shams, the son of divine, with his own heart. So Shams tried to teach Rumi to be independent and to feel his mentor into his heart. If we are critically analyze this book, then we can look into strengths of the book and some challenges. So, strengths of this book is that this is unprecedentedly authenticated book because this is based on those discourses which had been taken between the Shams and Rumi. This book bypasses centuries of myth making. For English readers, it is the first time Shams speaks in his own voice without it being filtered through Rumi's poetry. And second thing is scholarly rigor. Chittik is very great scholar. Chittik's translation is precise, elegant, and uncompromising. He provides a massive apparatus of footnotes, historical context, and a glossary of Sufi terms that help the reader decode incredibly dense esoteric allusions. The portrait of paradox. The book beautifully captures the paradox of Sufi wisdom. Shams is simultaneously gentle and harsh, fearlessly traditional, yet shockingly irreverent to established religious authorities. And then we come on the challenges. Fragmented and esoteric structure. Because the original source text consists of haphazardly recorded spoken notes, it is not a formal autobiography or biographical profile of Shams Tabriz. It is based on those fractured notes on the discourses taken place between Shams and Rumi. The book lacks a traditional narrative. Even with Chittak's masterful restructuring, the prose can feel disjoint, and highly abstract. It is usual. And this book is not a casual uh, uh, document or pop spirituality book. Readers without basic baseline in Islamic theology, Quranic verses, and Sufi metaphysics may find themselves easily lost or misinterpreting Shams's radical, blunt statements. And if we are concluding the abstract of the book, then we can say that Me and Rumi is a masterpiece of spiritual scholarship. It is an indispensable read for anyone who loves Rumi's poetry and wants to understand the exact crucible in which that poetry was forged. It rescues Shams from realm of ghosts and places him firmly back into the history as an astonishingly vivid, challenging, and brilliant mystic. So this is very unique aspect of the book, because people think Shams as a giant and mystical, as a secrecy. However, William Chittick has tried to personify him as a human being, and it is very much interesting to find in this book that Shams also was in search of a person who can bear his spiritual intensity, and he found Rumi rightly, fairly, and squarely, and that association uh, created a great Jalaluddin Rumi as well as a great mentor and unique type of mentor, Shams Tabrizi. So both of these figures have influenced the history of mysticism, history of Islam, history of literature, and history of Persian poetry. And it also reflects another interesting point that Shams was of the view that though there is knowledge in the books, however, Zok is very much necessary, or divine testing is very much necessary to go through or to get through the real message of the books, real message of the Quran, real message of the Hadith, real message of other books. So it is just our abstract of this book. Dear friends, you are requested, invited, and suggested to read this great treatise written by a great scholar, William Chittick. Thank you very much.